The bridge of the Imperial flagship Dominant Eternal fell silent as Admiral Tormek stared at the anomaly on the long-range scanners. It had appeared suddenly, a ripple in the fabric of space where no ripple should be. "Report," he commanded, his four-fingered hand tightening around the armrest of his command chair. The sensor officer, Lieutenant Voss, worked frantically at her console, her scaled skin reflecting the red emergency lights now pulsing throughout the bridge. "Unknown vessel, sir. It just emerged from what appears to be a self-generated wormhole. Nothing in our database matches the signature." "Impossible," Tormek muttered. Only the Hexan Empire possessed wormhole technology, and even then, they required massive gateway structures at both entry and exit points. A ship-generated wormhole was theoretically impossible with current technology. "Distance and trajectory," the Admiral demanded. "Approximately 60 million kilometers, sir," Voss replied, her voice tight with tension. "And it's headed directly toward us. Current velocity suggests intercept in under 3 hours." The strategic display showed the Empire's 7th Fleet spread across the Aurelian system, 27 warships deployed in standard defensive formation around the newly conquered colony world. The unknown vessel was represented by a pulsing red dot, cutting straight toward the heart of their formation. "Open a channel," Tormek ordered. "All frequencies. Let's see what we're dealing with." Communications Officer Drell attempted to establish contact for several minutes before shaking his head. "No response, Admiral. Either they can't hear us or they're ignoring us." "Launch reconnaissance drones. I want visual confirmation." The bridge crew moved with practiced efficiency, despite the growing unease. The Hexan Empire had conquered 3 sectors in the past decade, crushing all resistance with overwhelming technological superiority. They weren't accustomed to surprises. 15 minutes later, the first images appeared on the main view screen. The vessel was unlike anything Tormek had ever seen, an elongated asymmetrical design with no visible engine ports. Its hull was midnight black, absorbing all light rather than reflecting it, making it difficult to determine its exact dimensions. Conservative estimates put it at roughly 1/4 the size of the Dominant Eternal. It bears no markings of any known species, the intelligence officer noted. "No weapons arrays that we can identify, but those protrusions could be concealed artillery." "A new species?" Tormak's second-in-command, Commander Lazen, suggested, "perhaps from beyond the Void Barrier." The Void Barrier had long been considered the natural boundary of explorable space, a region of intense radiation and gravitational distortion that no ship had successfully traversed. The concept that something might have come from beyond it sent a chill through the bridge. "Alert all ships," Tormek decided. "Battle stations. Deploy an intercept formation Theta. I want kinetic barriers and maximum and weapons systems hot." As the fleet began to maneuver, reorganizing into an offensive posture, an ensign at the communications station suddenly stood up. "Sir, we're receiving a transmission. Audio only." "Let's hear it," Tormek ordered. The voice that echoed through the bridge was smooth, calm, and utterly alien, not because of its tone or inflection, but because of the perfect clarity with which it spoke the Imperial language. "Attention Hexan vessels. This is Captain Thomas Reynolds of the Earthship Defiant. Your presence in this system violates the territorial claims of the Aurelian people, who have requested our assistance. You are ordered to withdraw immediately or face the consequences. You have 1 hour to begin evacuation procedures." The bridge erupted in disbelieving murmurs. A single ship was demanding the withdrawal of an entire Imperial fleet. "Earth." Tormek repeated the unfamiliar word. "Where in the 16 hells is Earth?" Admiral Tormek's mandibles clicked in agitation as he digested the audacious demand. The Empire had never encountered a species called humans before, nor had they heard of this Earth. The sheer arrogance of this solitary vessel challenging an Imperial fleet was both infuriating and perplexing. "Send visual data on this ship to Imperial High Command," Tormek ordered. "And prepare a response to this, Captain Reynolds." The communications officer activated the transmission array. "Channel open, sir." Tormek straightened his ceremonial collar and spoke with the practiced authority that had cowed dozens of species across the galaxy. "Unidentified vessel. This is Admiral Tormek of the Hexan Imperial 7th Fleet. The Aurelian system is now under Imperial protection and governance by right of conquest. Your interference constitutes an act of war against the Empire. Power down your systems and prepare to be boarded or be destroyed." The response came almost immediately. "Admiral Tormek, I understand your position. However, the concept of right of conquest is not recognized under Terran law or the Galactic Cooperative Charter, which the Aurelians signed 3 months ago. I repeat, withdraw your forces. Tormak's secondary eyes blinked in confusion. Galactic Cooperative? What nonsense is this? There is no such organization. Sir? His intelligence officer interrupted. Long-range scans indicate the vessel is deploying something. Multiple small objects, possibly fighters or drones. The view screen showed tiny specks separating from the mysterious ship, spreading outward like seeds from a pod. Defensive formation. Tormak barked. Lock weapons on those objects. If any approach within 10,000 kilometers, destroy them. The fleet shifted, the massive dreadnoughts and cruisers rearranging themselves into a spherical formation, weapons arrays glowing as they charged. The smaller objects, now numbering in the hundreds, continued their deployment but maintained their distance. Sir, analysis suggests these are not weapons, Lieutenant Voss reported. They appear to be observation platforms. They're positioning themselves around our fleet. Commander Lazen leaned closer to Tormak. A surveillance network. They're studying our capabilities. A new transmission came through, this time accompanied by a visual feed. Captain Reynolds appeared on screen, a bipedal creature with pinkish tan skin, facial features reminiscent of several known species yet distinctly different, and clothed in what appeared to be a navy blue uniform with silver insignia. Admiral, to demonstrate our peaceful intentions, I've deployed non-weaponized observation drones only. They will not approach your vessels. However, I must inform you that 3 additional Earth ships will arrive within the next 12 hours. They carry representatives of the Aurelian government in exile and humanitarian aid for the civilian population. We intend to deliver this aid with or without your cooperation. Tormak's patience evaporated. You threaten the Empire with 3 ships. Our fleet will reduce you to atoms before your reinforcements arrive. The human's expression remained calm, almost sympathetic. Admiral, we're not threatening you. We're simply informing you of our intentions. Violence is unnecessary. Enough. Tormak signaled to end the transmission. Target their primary vessel. All forward batteries. Let's see how their hull handles Imperial phase cannons. The massive flagship rotated slightly, bringing its main weapons array to bear on the lone vessel. Across the fleet, targeting systems lock onto the Defiant. Sir, Voss interrupted, her voice wavering, the enemy ship's energy signature just changed. They've activated some kind of defensive system. On the view screen, a subtle shimmer appeared around the Earth vessel, a distortion that seemed to bend light around its hull. Fire, Tormak commanded. Brilliant beams of energy erupted from the dominant Eternal and 2 supporting cruisers, converging on the Defiant. The bridge crew watched expectantly for the satisfying explosion that would end this absurd standoff. Instead, the beam simply disappeared. They struck the shimmering field around the ship and vanished without a trace. No explosion, no dispersal effect, nothing. It was as if the energy had ceased to exist upon contact. Impossible, whispered Commander Lazen. That was enough firepower to vaporize a small moon. Before anyone could process what had happened, the human captain's voice returned over the comms, still frustratingly calm. Admiral Tormak, I regret that you've chosen this path as a demonstration of our resolve and to prevent further hostilities. We will now disable your weapons systems. Please understand this is not an act of aggression, but a peacekeeping measure. Alarms suddenly blared across the bridge as ship after ship in the fleet reported weapons systems failing, power fluctuations cascading through their networks. No shots had been fired by the Earth vessel, no energy signatures detected. The Imperial ship's own systems were simply shutting down. Status report. Tormak roared as the bridge around him descended into controlled chaos. Warning indicators flashed across every console, and the strategic display showed red alerts spreading throughout the fleet. Weapons systems offline across all vessels, sir, reported the tactical officer, frantically working his controls. Power grid compromise. We're detecting some kind of invasive code in our central computers. It's bypassing all firewalls and security protocols as if they weren't even there. Impossible, muttered Tormak for the 3rd time that day. The Hexen's cybernetic defense systems were the most sophisticated in known space. No enemy had ever penetrated them, not even the legendary Mithridian hacker collectives. The human's face reappeared on screen. Admiral, your weapons capabilities have been temporarily neutralized. Your life support, propulsion, and communications remain functional. This is a demonstration, not an attack. Tormac's rage boiled over. This is an act of war. The Empire will not. The Empire, Captain Reynolds interrupted calmly, is operating on incomplete information. Permission to send a data packet to your systems? It contains historical records you should examine. Before Tormac could refuse, Commander Layson stepped forward. Admiral, I recommend we review the information. Our tactical position is compromise. With a grudging nod, Tormac authorized the transfer. Moments later, the main view screen filled with images that stunned the bridge crew into silence. The data showed historical records of a species, humans, that had evolved on a planet called Earth in a distant sector of the galaxy. Their technological development had been unremarkable until approximately 50 Earth years ago, when they had apparently discovered the remains of an ancient vessel buried beneath their planet's surface. The records detailed how this discovery had catapulted human technological development forward centuries and mere decades. More significantly, it revealed that humans had made contact with dozens of species beyond the Void Barrier, species unknown to the Empire, and formed what they called the Galactic Cooperative, an alliance of civilizations based on mutual defense and scientific exchange. This is propaganda, Tormac declared, though doubt had begun to creep into his voice. Admiral, the sensor officer called out, I'm detecting unusual quantum signatures from the human vessel. Their power source. It's utilizing technology similar to the ancestral ruins we discovered in the Merak system. The mention of the ancestors, the mysterious precursor race whose technological remnants had formed the foundation of Hexan advancement, sent a chill through the bridge. The Empire had spent centuries studying stellar artifacts, building their dominion upon the fragments they managed to reverse engineer. These humans, if the data was to be believed, had not only discovered intact ancestral technology, but had fully mastered it. Captain Reynolds' voice drew their attention back to the screen. Admiral, the vessel your people discovered in the Merak system was a scout ship, damaged and abandoned. What your archaeologists identified as the ancestors are known to us as the precursors. They were one of the founding members of the original cooperative 12,000 years ago. He paused, allowing the information to sink in. The ship my people discovered on Earth was a precursor diplomatic vessel with an intact database and functional AI. It chose to share its knowledge with us because it recognized something in humanity that aligned with the precursor's own values. On screen, the data continued to flow, showing human expansion, peaceful first contacts, the integration of technologies far beyond what the Empire possessed. Not conquest, but cooperation. Not subjugation, but symbiosis. The Orwellians reached out to us when your fleet entered their system, Reynolds continued. As members of the cooperative, they were entitled to our assistance. We hoped to arrive before hostilities began. Tormac slumped slightly in his command chair, the implications becoming clear. If even half of what he was seeing was true, the Empire had unwittingly attacked a species connected to powers far beyond their comprehension. Why have we never encountered your cooperative before? Layson asked. The Void Barrier was established by the precursors as a quarantine measure. Reynolds explained. Your sector of space has been isolated because several aggressive species were showing signs of technological development, without corresponding ethical advancement. The quarantine was meant to remain until such species either destroyed themselves or evolved beyond their warlike tendencies. And now? Tormac found himself asking. Now, said Reynolds, the quarantine is being reevaluated. Your expansion into Aurelian space triggered a review. I represent the First Contact Team. The Imperial flagship hung in space, weapons dormant, as Admiral Tormac digested the human's words. His entire worldview, the supremacy of the Hexan Empire, their divine right to expand and conquer, was being challenged not just militarily but philosophically. Your claims are significant, Tormac finally said, choosing his words carefully. But you must understand my skepticism. One ship appears from nowhere, disables an entire fleet, and then tells us everything we believe about our place in the universe is wrong. Reynolds nodded on screen. Skepticism is reasonable, Admiral, but consider this. If we meant you harm, would we have disabled your weapons rather than destroying your ships? Would we be having this conversation? Before Tormac could respond, a junior officer approached with a data tablet. Sir, we've analyzed their power emissions. The technology is beyond our comprehension. Energy patterns suggest they're operating with zero-point field manipulation at a level our theorists have only speculated about. Commander Layson studied the readings and paled visibly. Admiral, if these readings are accurate, that single vessel could generate enough energy to power our entire fleet. Possibly more. I'm transmitting coordinates for a nearby precursor outpost, Reynolds said. Your scientists can verify our claims there. It's been dormant for millennia, but it will recognize authorized Imperial researchers and provide limited access to its historical database. The coordinates appeared on their navigation system, indicating a small, uninhabited planet in a neighboring system, a world the Imperial survey had dismissed as unremarkable. Why would you give us access to such technology? Tormek asked suspiciously. The outpost contains historical and cultural data only, Reynolds clarified. No weapons technology or strategic information. Think of it as a library. The cooperative believes knowledge should be shared, but power must be earned through ethical advancement. Tormak's mandibles clicked in contemplation. And if we refuse to withdraw from Aurelian space? If we consider your interference an act of war? For the first time, Reynolds' expression hardened slightly. Then we would be forced to demonstrate capabilities beyond what you've seen today. The 3 ships I mentioned will arrive in approximately 10 hours. One is a diplomatic vessel carrying Aurelian representatives. One is a medical ship with supplies for the Aurelian civilians affected by your invasion. The third is a Guardian-class defensive vessel. Images appeared on screen showing a ship significantly larger than the Defiant, sleek, powerful, and clearly designed for combat operations, despite its elegant appearance. Our goal is peaceful resolution, Admiral, Reynolds continued. The cooperative doesn't seek to conquer or control the Empire. We simply enforce certain principles among our member worlds, primary among them being the right of sentient species to self-determination. Lieutenant Voss spoke up hesitantly. Sir, if I may, the Aurelians did resist our initial diplomatic overtures. They declined Imperial protection before we were forced to insist. A flicker of something was at amusement crossed the human's face. Yes, Lieutenant, self-determination sometimes means rejecting offers from powerful neighbors. The Aurelians chose membership in the cooperative 5 years ago, after observing our interactions with their trading partners. Tormek felt the creeping sense of dread. How many other species beyond their borders that already align with this cooperative? How many potential conquests were now beyond their reach? You've given us much to consider, Captain Reynolds, he said finally. I must consult with Imperial High Command before making any decisions regarding withdrawal. Understood, Admiral. Your communications systems remain fully operational for that purpose. However, I should inform you that several cooperative observation posts have already noted fleet movements throughout Hexan space. 17 additional battle groups have been mobilized in the last hour, apparently in response to our encounter. The implication was clear. The Empire was preparing for war, unaware what they might be facing. Perhaps, Reynolds suggested gently, when you communicate with your leadership, you might emphasize the opportunity this represents rather than the threat. The cooperative has peacefully integrated hundreds of formerly isolated species. Many were once as militaristic as the Hexan before discovering more productive paths to advancement. Tormek stood from his command chair, his imposing height a reflection of generations of Hexan evolutionary dominance. Captain Reynolds, I will convey your message. But understand this. The Hexan Empire has ruled these sectors for 1,000 years. We do not easily abandon what we believe is ours by right. No one is asking you to abandon your empire, Admiral, Reynolds replied, only to reconsider how it might evolve. History shows that empires based solely on military dominance inevitably fall. Those that adapt to embrace cooperation, trade, and cultural exchange endure for millennia. Imperial Command Vessel Dominant Eternal vibrated subtly as its quantum communicators pushed a signal through subspace toward the Hexan throne world. Admiral Tormek had ordered all non-essential personnel from the bridge, leaving only his most trusted officers to witness the communication with Emperor Vexter himself. This is unprecedented, muttered Commander Lazen, still reviewing the data from the human vessel. Their technological capabilities suggest a civilization at least 3 evolutionary stages beyond our own. Which makes no sense, Tormek countered. Our scouts mapped their sector centuries ago. There were no advanced civilizations there, only primitive species barely capable of rudimentary spaceflight. Unless they were hidden, Lieutenant Voss suggested, or protected. The quantum communicator hummed to life, and a massive holographic form of Emperor Vexter materialized above the command deck. His ornate exoskeleton gleamed with embedded cybernetics, the mark of the highest Hexan nobility. Admiral Tormek, the Emperor's voice resonated with authority. Explain these troubling reports. How has a single vessel neutralized an entire Imperial battle fleet? Tormek lowered his head in deference. My Emperor, we face a situation without precedent. The species, these humans, possess technology derived from what they call precursor artifacts. Our analysis confirms similarities to ancestral technology, but far more advanced than anything we've recovered. He transmitted the accumulated data, watching as the Emperor's secondary eyes widened in uncharacteristic surprise. Furthermore, Tormek continued, they claim to represent a multi-species alliance that exists beyond the Void Barrier, a region they describe as an artificial quarantine zone. The Emperor's mandibles clicked rapidly, a sign of agitation rarely displayed in public communications. These claims require verification. What proof have they offered? Coordinates to a supposed precursor outpost within our territory. Our historical surveys showed nothing of significance at that location, but their data suggests it's shielded from conventional detection. The Emperor was silent for several moments, his powerful mind calculating political and military implications. This changes much, Admiral. If verified, we must reassess our expansion strategy. My Emperor? Tormek couldn't hide his surprise. The Empire never retreated, never reconsidered its divine right to rule. Do not mistake strategic recalculation for weakness. Admiral, the Emperor's voice hardened. If these humans speak truly, we face a power that requires careful study before confrontation. If they lie, we lose nothing by appearing to cooperate while gathering intelligence. Tormek nodded in understanding. What are your orders regarding the Aurelian occupation? Maintain position, but cease all military operations against civilian targets. I am dispatching research vessel Empirical Truth to investigate the coordinates provided. Until we confirm or disprove their claims, we will engage diplomatically. After the transmission ended, Tormek turned to his officers. You are the Emperor. We adapt, sir. Voss interrupted. Sensors detect new quantum disturbances. 3 more vessels are emerging, matching the profile Captain Reynolds described. The view screen showed space folding in on itself as 3 ships emerged from self-generated wormholes, 1 sleek diplomatic vessel, 1 bearing medical insignia, and 1 massive warship that dwarfed even the Imperial flagship. Before Tormek could respond, the bridge doors slid open, admitting an ancient Hexan wearing the robes of the Imperial Archaeological Society. Archon Krell was the Empire's foremost expert on ancestral technology, summoned from the science vessel accompanying the fleet. Admiral, the old Hexan's voice trembled with excitement. I've completed my analysis of the data they provided about these precursors. If accurate, it would explain the inconsistencies in our understanding of the ancestral artifacts. Explain, Tormek commanded. Krell activated a holographic display. For centuries, we've puzzled over certain aspects of ancestral technology that seem designed for physiologies unlike any we've encountered. Their artifacts often contained interfaces unsuitable for any known species. The hologram showed various ancestral artifacts alongside biological schematics. These interfaces, Krell continued, would be perfectly suited for human physiological structures. Furthermore, certain mathematical constants in ancestral code match perfectly with mathematical principles these humans claim to have discovered independently on their homeworld. Commander Lazen stepped forward. Are you suggesting, Vess? Krell's voice dropped to a whisper. These humans may be direct biological descendants of the ancestors themselves, not merely inheritors of their technology, but their genetic legacy. The bridge fell silent as the implications settled upon them. The Empire had built its technological base by scavenging and reverse engineering the remnants of a civilization they worshipped as semi-divine. And now the living descendants of those beings had returned to find the Hexan using that technology to conquer and subjugate. If the Emperor confirms this, Tormek said quietly, it will shake the very foundations of Imperial doctrine. A communication alert chimed, and Captain Reynolds appeared once again on screen. Behind him stood representatives of various species, some familiar to the Hexans, others completely alien. Admiral Tormek, Reynolds said, I'd like to introduce the diplomatic delegation from the cooperative. They're prepared to discuss terms for the Aurelian situation, and, if you're amenable, the process for opening formal relations between the cooperative and the Hexan Empire. Tormek straightened his posture, suddenly aware that he was representing the Empire before beings who might be connected to the very source of their power. The Empire welcomes this dialogue, Captain Reynolds, he replied formally. Perhaps we have much to learn from one another. The diplomatic vessel Harmony provided neutral ground for the first formal meeting between Hexan leadership and the cooperative delegation. Admiral Tormek had selected a small team to accompany him, Commander Lazen, Archon Krell, and 2 Imperial guards whose ceremonial presence was required by protocol. The cooperative meeting chamber defied Hexan architectural sensibilities. Where Imperial design favored imposing angularity and displays of technological might, the space was organic and flowing. Living plants grew along walls that seemed to blend seamlessly with the floor. Light emanated not from fixtures, but from the surfaces themselves, creating an environment free from harsh shadows. Captain Reynolds greeted them at the entrance. Up close, the human appeared even more unusual, smaller than the average Hexan, but with a straight-back confidence that commanded respect. Beside him stood representatives from 6 different species, including an Aurelian elder whose ceremonial robes bore scorch marks, evidence of the recent conflict. Admiral Tormek, Reynolds began. Allow me to introduce Elder Nomari of Aurelia, Ambassador T. Prell of Vulcanus, Chief Speaker Glimmersong of the Luminary Collective, Diplomatic Envoys of the Thrall Hives, Arbiter Vunlor of the Kelthian Republic, and Director Solendis of the Earth Diplomatic Corps. Tormek acknowledged each with the formal Hexan gesture of recognition. I speak with provisional authority from Emperor Vextor, pending the outcome of our scientific investigation. Understood. Director Solendis stepped forward. The human female's bearing suggested significant authority. We appreciate your willingness to engage diplomatically despite the unusual circumstances of our introduction. Archon Krell could barely contain his excitement as he studied the chamber. This material, its responsive binaural architecture. We've found fragments of similar technology in ancestral ruins, but never functional examples. Yes, Reynolds confirmed. Precursor architecture was designed to respond to the occupants' needs and environmental preferences. This chamber is currently balanced for Hexan comfort levels. As they seated themselves around a circular table that had no obvious supports, Elder Nomari spoke, his voice carrying the weight of recent suffering. Admiral, my people have endured 3 weeks under Imperial occupation. 17,000 civilians have been killed or injured. Our request is simple: the complete withdrawal of Hexan forces from our system. Tormak's mandibles tightened. The situation is more complex than, actually, Director Solendis interrupted gently. From our perspective, it's quite straightforward. The Aurelian government formally requested cooperative protection 5 years ago. Your invasion violates not only their sovereignty but also cooperative security agreements. The Empire was unaware of these agreements, Tormek countered. We had no knowledge of your cooperative's existence, which is why we're talking rather than fighting, Reynolds noted. Ignorance provides context, though not justification. Ambassador T. Prell, a tall being with copper-toned skin and pointed ears, consulted a data terminal. Our historical analysis suggests the Hexan Empire has conquered 14 formerly independent worlds in the past 3 decades. All were subjugated through military action after refusing protection treaties. The accuracy of the information was unnerving. How much do they know about Imperial operations? The Empire brings order and advancement to primitive worlds. Tormek recited the familiar justification. We elevate species that would otherwise remain trapped in technological stagnation. Chief Speaker Glimmersong, a being composed of what appeared to be luminous gas contained within a translucent exoskeleton, emitted a series of light pulses that the translation system rendered in words. My species was considered primitive by the first cooperative contact team 15 millennium ago. We were not conquered but invited to learn at our own pace. Today, luminary architectural theory is studied throughout cooperative space. Archon Krell leaned forward eagerly. Your species has existed within this cooperative for 15,000 years. Our historical records only extend back 8,000 years. The implications for our understanding of galactic history are enormous. Which brings us to a critical point. Director Solendis said, the Hexan Empire has built its technological base on incomplete understanding of precursor artifacts. This has led to certain misconceptions about your place in the galaxy. Images appeared above the table, holographic representations of various ancestral ruins discovered throughout Imperial space. Alongside each, the system displayed the complete, undamaged original structure as recorded in cooperative archives. These weren't military installations, Reynolds explained. They were cultural centers, educational facilities, and scientific outposts. The weapons technology you derived from them was meant for planetary defense, not conquest. Tormek felt the growing discomfort. The Empire's entire expansion doctrine was built upon the belief that they were the rightful inheritors of ancestral power, that their technological supremacy was evidence of their evolutionary superiority. You claim humans are descendants of these precursors, Tormek said cautiously. What evidence supports this? Director Celendis nodded to Reynolds, who activated another holographic display. Genetic analysis shows that humans share approximately 97% of core genetic markers with preserved precursor DNA samples. More significantly, we possess neurological structures capable of interfacing directly with precursor technology, a capability your scientists have attempted to replicate through cybernetic augmentation. Krell gasped audibly. The Imperial Augmentation Program, our attempts to interface directly with ancestral technology, has always produced limited results. The neural architecture never quite connects, because it wasn't designed for Hexan physiology, Reynolds confirmed. The precursors established outposts throughout this galaxy, but Earth was one of their primary seeding worlds. Seeding worlds? Commander Lazen asked. The precursors didn't simply explore space. They cultivated it. Ambassador T. Prell explained. They established evolutionary parameters on promising worlds, guiding the development of intelligent life according to various models. Humans represent one such experiment, an attempt to recreate their own species after the precursors themselves began to evolve beyond physical form. And the Hexan? Tormek found himself asking. Your species was also part of their grand design. Celendis said gently, the precursors value diversity above all. They didn't seek to create copies of themselves, but rather to encourage unique evolutionary paths that might someday converge in mutual understanding. 3 months after first contact, Admiral Tormek stood on the observation deck of Research Station Ancestral Insight, watching as the cooperative vessel Illumination settled into orbit around what had once been an unremarkable gas giant in the Hexan Viridian system. The Emperor himself stood beside him, having traveled personally to witness this historic moment. The shield frequencies have been provided, reported the chief scientist. Our scanners should penetrate the camouflage field momentarily. Around them, the Empire's foremost scientists and military strategists waited with barely contained anticipation. The past months had transformed the political landscape of known space. Imperial forces had withdrawn from Aurelian territory, the first such retreat in the Empire's history. Yet surprisingly, Imperial citizens had not revolted at this apparent weakness. They had instead been captivated by the revelations about the precursors and humanity's connection to them. Commencing scan, the scientist announced. The giant's image on the main view screen shimmered and then changed. Where there had been swirling atmospheric bands of methane and hydrogen, a massive structure appeared, a gleaming orbital installation the size of a small moon, its architecture unmistakably ancestral but intact, undamaged by time. The Viridian Archival Repository. Captain Reynolds explained from his position near the Imperial delegation. One of 12 established by the precursors throughout this sector before they departed physical space. It's been here all along, hidden in plain sight. Emperor Vexter's cybernetic implants glinted as he turned to face the human. And you simply give us access to this knowledge, after centuries of what you must view as our misuse of precursor technology. Reynolds smiled. The precursors believed knowledge should be free to all who were ready to receive it. The cooperative follows that principle. Besides, the repository doesn't contain weapons, schematics, or conquest strategies. It holds cultural, philosophical, and scientific knowledge that the precursors believed essential for species approaching galactic citizenship. Across the Empire, similar revelations were occurring. Cooperative archaeologists were helping Imperial scientists discover and access precursor sites previously hidden or misunderstood. The revelation that the Hexan themselves had been part of the precursors' grand evolutionary design, not as conquerors, but as one unique expression of sentient potential, had profound effects on Imperial philosophy. Admiral Tormek, the Emperor, spoke quietly for his ears alone. When you first encountered the human vessel, you believed it marked the beginning of the Empire's fall. 3 months later, how do you assess our position? Tormek considered carefully. Stronger, by Emperor, though different. Our military supremacy within known space was an illusion. We simply hadn't met anyone who could challenge us. Now we face a choice between conflict we cannot win or cooperation that offers advancement beyond our imagining. Indeed. The Emperor's voice carried no trace of regret. The Imperial Council has reviewed the preliminary data from the precursor archives. The technologies suggested there, dimensional engineering, conscious energy manipulation, biological immortality, make our greatest achievements seem primitive by comparison. On the view screen, a shuttle departed from the cooperative vessel, heading toward a massive entrance that had appeared in the station's exterior. The joint research team, half Hexan, half cooperative scientists, would be the first Imperial citizens to set foot in an intact precursor installation. There will be resistance, Tormek noted. Not all Imperial houses will accept this new order. Change always faces opposition, the Emperor agreed. But we are not abandoning our empire, we are evolving it. The Hexan have always prided ourselves on adaptation. It is how we survived the Great Cataclysm 10,000 years ago. Captain Reynolds approached, offering a data crystal. Emperor Vexter, with your permission, the Cooperative Council has approved sharing this historical record with you. It contains information about the Great Cataclysm that may clarify certain aspects of Hexan history. The Emperor accepted the crystal with unexpected reverence. You know of our cataclysm? Our historical records from that period are fragmented. Yes, Reynolds said gently. The cataclysm was actually the quarantine barrier being established. Your ancestors weren't the only species affected. Across the view screen, the station's massive entrance dilated open, revealing an interior aglow with soft blue light. The Joint Research Team's shuttle disappeared inside, beginning a journey that would rewrite Imperial understanding of their own origins. The historical records show that 12,000 years ago, this sector experienced a period of aggressive expansion by several technologically advanced species. Reynolds continued, the Hexan were among the most promising civilizations, having independently developed early spaceflight capabilities. But our historical chronicles speak of a great burning in the sky, the Emperor said, a cataclysm that destroyed our first interstellar colonies and forced our people back to our homeworld for nearly 2,000 years. Reynolds nodded. The Precursor Council made the difficult decision to establish the Void Barrier when several warlike species began weaponizing discovered precursor technology. Rather than exterminate these species, they created a quarantine zone, allowing the civilizations within to develop in isolation until they either destroyed themselves or evolved beyond aggressive expansion. Tormek's mandibles clicked in sudden understanding. The ancestral ruins we've discovered, they were observation posts. They weren't abandoned, they were monitoring stations. Correct, Reynolds confirmed. The precursors never intended the quarantine to be permanent. Regular assessments were conducted, waiting for signs that the species within were ready for reintegration. The Emperor's secondary eyes narrowed in thought. What changed? Why reveal yourselves now after 12 millennia of observation? Two factors, Reynolds explained. First, your expansion into Aurelian space threatened a species already under cooperative protection. But more importantly, certain elements within your scientific community had begun asking the right questions. He gestured to Archon Krell, who stood nearby reviewing data from the repository. Scholars like Krell had started to recognize inconsistencies in the traditional understanding of ancestral artifacts. They theorized that the technology had been designed for cooperative advancement rather than domination. The precursor AI that monitors this sector determined the Hexan were approaching a philosophical turning point. The Emperor regarded Reynolds thoughtfully. So our encounter was staged? The test, not staged, Reynolds corrected. But the timing was deliberate. We could have intervened earlier in your conquest of other worlds, but those species weren't under cooperative protection. The Aurelian situation provided an opportunity for contact at a moment when your civilization might be receptive to alternative perspectives. Tormek felt a mixture of indignation and reluctant admiration. The strategic thinking behind the cooperative's approach rivaled the most complex Imperial military operations, but with the goal of integration rather than subjugation. And now? Tormek asked, what place does the Empire hold in your cooperative vision? For the first time, Director Selendis answered, having joined them on the observation deck. That depends entirely on you, Admiral. The cooperative doesn't seek to dismantle the Empire or strip away your cultural identity. We propose partnership. Your people have developed unique innovations, even with limited understanding of precursor technology. Imagine what might be achieved with full access to that knowledge, guided by ethical principles that ensure it benefits all sentient life. From the view screen came a burst of communication as the research team reported their initial findings from inside the repository. Their voices carried unmistakable awe. They've accessed the central archives, Reynolds explained. The knowledge contained there spans millions of years of precursor history, including the complete record of hexen development from pre-sentience to your current state. The Emperor's posture straightened imperceptibly. Our people have long believed we were destined for greatness among the stars. It seems we were not entirely incorrect, merely misguided in how the greatness would manifest. The precursors believed that true evolutionary advancement comes not from conquest, but from synthesis, Reynolds said. The blending of diverse perspectives to create something greater than any single species could achieve alone. On the screen, the repository began to glow more brightly as ancient systems fully activated after millennia of dormancy. The station was awakening, recognizing the presence of authorized visitors after a long sleep. Emperor Vexter, Director Solendis said formally, the Cooperative Council extends an invitation for the Hexen Empire to send representatives to the Galactic Assembly, not as subjects or subordinates, but as equals in the ongoing project of galactic civilization. The Emperor regarded the humans thoughtfully. You must realize that some within the Empire will resist this transition. Of course, Reynolds acknowledged, cultural evolution is never easy. But consider what you stand to gain, not just advanced technology, but connection to a community of civilizations that have faced similar challenges. The Thrall were once conquerors like the Hexen before discovering the benefits of symbiotic relationships. The Luminari were isolationists who believed all other species were mindless automatons until first contact proved otherwise. Each species in the cooperative has undergone its own transformation. Solendis added, humans were divided by tribal conflicts and resource wars until precursor contact showed us a greater purpose. As they spoke, a massive holographic projection appeared above the station, visible from the observation deck. It displayed a galactic map unlike any the Imperials had ever seen, revealing not just the quarantined sectors, but the vast expanse of cooperative space beyond. Thousands of inhabited systems, hundreds of spacefaring civilizations, all interconnected through a network of cooperation and exchange that spanned the galaxy. The Hexen Empire, which had seemed so vast and powerful, appeared as just a small cluster of stars in one spiral arm, significant but part of something far greater. The choice before you, Reynolds said quietly, is not whether the Empire will stand or fall. It is whether it will remain isolated within its quarantine zone, trapped by outdated philosophies of dominance, or join a galactic community that has moved beyond such limitations. The Emperor was silent for a long moment, his gaze fixed on the galactic display. When he finally spoke, his voice carried the weight of history. When I ascended to the throne, I swore to lead the Empire to its rightful place among the stars. I believed that meant conquest and subjugation of lesser species. He turned to face the human. I now understand my oath differently. Our rightful place is not as conquerors, but as contributors to this greater civilization you represent. Admiral Tormek, who had begun this journey facing what he believed was an existential threat to the Empire, found himself strangely at peace with this transformation. The military strategist in him recognized the inevitability of adaptation when faced with superior force. But more than that, the explorer that had driven him to the stars in his youth recognized the opportunity before them. That strange ship that wasn't one of ours. Tormek mused, watching as the cooperative vessel aligned itself with the ancient station. It wasn't coming to end our civilization. It was coming to truly begin it. Reynolds smiled. The precursors had a saying, the universe reveals itself to those ready to see. The Hexen are ready now. Across the Empire, citizens watched as their leaders stood alongside beings from beyond the void barrier, illuminated by the light of ancient knowledge awakening after 12,000 years of patience. The alarms that had blared across the fleet at first contact now gave way to a different signal. Not a warning, but an invitation to join something greater than they had ever imagined. A new chapter in galactic history had begun not with conquest, but with understanding.